Okay, this video is about fixed timing and my ECcalc 27. If you notice right here, it is asking whether or not the ignition timing curve, whether or not there's a timing curve. And what I mean by timing curve is that if you graph it, as this is RPM increase and this is timing advance, if you graph it, you'll see that it does have a natural curve to it. Even a digital one will try to make a curve there. So this is the timing of a fixed timing ignition, which in this case the old Makos, in this case the 250 and the 440, both had fixed timing ignitions. So no matter what the RPM is, it is fixed at that timing. In this case it's like almost 15 degrees before top dead center. In this one it is 20 degrees before top dead center. So if you got an old bike with a fixed timing, you enter no, in for no right there. And then all of a sudden this right here will be important. This is asking you for the peak RPM, the peak temperature RPM. So if you have a gauge, even if it's if you use a cheap one like what I've used, which only costs about $80, and you graph it, it's asking for what the RPM is at the I'm sorry, it's we shouldn't be looking at that curve, we should be looking at this straight. This is the actual graph of the temperature. So when you have a fixed timing, it's going to peak out at a certain RPM, probably about 3/4 of the very top RPM. And it does that because this little cross right here is right at this RPM is where the fixed timing is just right, okay, and that corresponds to that peak RPM. Okay, beyond that it's going to be too advanced. This is where it should be, retarding more and more with more RPM, but it's not. It's more, it's maintaining the same advance, which is too much. So too much advance in relation to where it should be means that it has more time to burn, and so when the exhaust port opens, it's cooler. So as you see, this peak corresponds to that cross right there, and I just made up these two curves right here to match that, because that's what happens. That's what you expect. On a 250, the curve is going to have a peak advance a lot more than a 440. That's typical. The smaller the bike, the more advanced you get, which is about 40% of peak RPM. So this increase in temperature is about 35 degrees per 1,000 RPM, and the same for its downslope, which is not too abnormal. Most bikes is about 30 degrees per 1,000 RPM. So on ECcalc, it asks you for the change in temperature for every 1,000 RPM, which you put right here. And this right here is this is fictitious, of course. This is saying the peak temperature RPM is 9,500, which, if you look here, is the fourth one. If you go over here for the mid-header temperature, the fourth one says 576, and it is the highest temperature of all of them. It goes down from there in this direction, it goes down from there in this direction, and you can see the effect on the secondary waves graph at that RPM. it has a knee. They change direction. That's because of the temperature difference. So it's very different from a bike with a modern CDI and a timing curve. And if you have a modern bike, just put Y for yes right there, and this right here will be ignored. And that's about all I have to say about that. But because of this, it's you might be able to guesstimate more or less where that peak happens. But the increase is not guessable. A normal increase, like I said, is 30 per 1,000. This is 35. This is from 5 to 7,000 is going 525 to 650. That's 125. That's about 63 per 1,000. That's twice as much as normal. So it's not easily guessable. Guesses. Yeah, guess. I just invented a new word. Guessable. Not decimal, guessable. Okay. So if you have a fixed timing bike, you have to measure the temperature. I don't think there's any way around it. I don't think guessing is going to get you anywhere, because there's a bit of precision involved here, and that's with the secondary waves. Where they cross these important bands is very important, and that affects your final power band. So that's one more step of inconvenience, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. Go to my website and find that link to the digital voltmeter that also has a thermocouple that you can use. I just drilled a hole in my exhaust pipe about 6 inches from the piston in the header, and stuck it in there, taped it in place, put the digital voltmeter on top of foam on top of the gas tank, and taped them all in place so I don't have to hold anything. Went down the street and noticed the temperature change as well as the speed, and then I used the calculator on sheet 3 right here. I kept entering different RPM here until it gave me the same speed I had in each gear, and that told me at what RPM it was. So that's one way to do it without a tachometer. Okay, so I guess that's all I have to say on this subject. Thanks for watching.